Our Election Day show is a cat.
Welcome to AT Banter, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything regarding the world of assistive technology. With our hosts, Steve Barkley, Rob Minot, and Ryan Fleury. Now, let's banter.
And hello, and welcome to yet another episode of AT Banter, a very special episode, if I may say so myself, but I might be biased. I am Rob Minot, and I am joined by Ryan Fleury.
I'm Ryan Fleury.
And Steve Barkley.
Also known in this episode as
Meow. That's right. Yeah. So, here we are. Here we are again.
Together again.
we are recording on Election Day.
On Election Day, and we are going to be talking about nothing about the election.
Yay.
Well, maybe a little bit, but... Well, no.
Let's just skip it altogether. It's a done deal at this point.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope it's a done deal on the right side.
No, Steve just wants to win the pool.
Or the
I
left,
want to win
or the left side.
We have a bit of a different show for you today.
It still has an AT bent.
A little bit.
Kind of. Yeah, it does.
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit. We've been teasing this show for a few weeks now, but today we are going to be talking to Mick, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name.
Szydlowski.
Thank you. Who is the cat guardian of Oskar the Blind Cat. He is going to be joining us and chatting a little bit about his experiences with Oskar and what they've been up to over the past few years.
Awesome.
So, if we're not going to talk about the election, why don't we just skip right to Mick?
Let's bring him in.
All right. We have talked to a lot of people within a variety of different communities, and this is our first time we've delved into another species.
Pet segment.
So today, we would like to welcome Mick Szydlowski. And no, Mick is not the other species that I was referring to. He is actually the guardian of Oskar the Blind Cat, who you've probably seen on this little thing that they have called the internet. Oskar's videos as a kitten went viral around 2011, and he has since made appearances on national television programs such as Good Morning America, Fox and Friends, Ellen, and The Daily Show. He's lent his fame to a variety of different charities and appearances, and he and his cat compatriot Klaus are even the stars of a pair of children's books. We would like to really welcome Mick.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, with the intro Rob gave you, you don't have to say anything now.
I know, yeah. That's my whole bio. It's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life, is bringing the story of these cats to the masses with whatever means I have.
Well, everybody knows the internet is made for sharing cat pictures and videos, so, makes sense.
It is. That's why the military created it in the first place, right?
It's a distraction while they operate in the background.
That's right.
Well, all right. Well, let's start at the beginning. Tell us how Oskar came into your lives.
Sure. I had Klaus for many years before I found Oskar, and Oskar, and finding Oskar was a complete fluke. I responded to a Craigslist ad in the summer of 2011 for a musical instrument. It was a vintage auto harp, something you don't see too often these days, but a friend of mine actually wanted it for his recording studio, and I drove out to a little farm from my home at that time, which was Omaha, Nebraska, to a farm near Glenwood, Iowa, maybe 45 minutes away. And on this farm, after I sealed the deal for the auto harp, I was introduced to one of the kittens that was living outside. He was actually, I think, one of the last kittens on the farm. Typical, farm cats living outdoors at all times, just kind of fending for themselves and probably, controlling some of the rodents and pests that are on the farm. But I could see right away that there was something different with Oskar. He was born with a condition called microphthalmia. So he has very small eyes that are kind of recessed far behind his eyelids. So it looked as if though he had no eyes, but he was very confident and, brave cat. He felt at ease in his outdoor environment. And the farmer just asked if I would like to, bring Oskar home along with Otto Harp. There was some attachment to him on behalf of the family there, but at the same time, they probably realized that they have too many cats and he would probably do better in an indoor environment. So it was a very quick decision at that point, even though I wasn't looking for another cat at the time. I thought I would add a dog to the household. I brought Oskar home in the summer of 2011, so it's been over 5 years now.
So it really was sort of a spur of the moment decision.
It really was, yes. And my wife Bethany came out with me to the farm. She kind of accompanies me on the road trips when we would look for antiques or buy things off of Craigslist and look for cool things. It was fun just to visit small towns and places we normally wouldn't see. And we're both there, so it was a lot easier to make the decision on the spot too, since we both agreed that it'd be great to bring him home.
And how did Klaus react when you brought him home?
Well, the reason I wasn't looking for another cat at the time is because Klaus, as a former stray kind of male tomcat, he was somewhat territorial and a little bit aggressive towards other cats. He really wanted his domain to be his. He did, however, like dogs, so that's why we were looking for a dog the whole time. So for the first 6 or 7 days of the introduction, there was, it was kind of a dark cloud over the household because Klaus was depressed almost. He refused to eat. He wouldn't come out from underneath the bed. He was making sounds I've never heard before. So he was showing his dissatisfaction from no longer being, the baby of the household. But I took the steps that are necessary to introduce cats in such situations. It's not just an issue of putting them in the same room and letting them, work it out. Right. You have to, separate them. And we did some tricks like feeding them their dinner, from opposite sides of a closed door. So the crack underneath the door kind of allows each cat to smell one another, and they associate the scent of the other cat kind of with the pleasure of eating dinner. So, it kind of eases the process of introducing two of them together. So we followed some advice. That's a time we hopped on the internet and talked to some experts and thought about the easiest way of doing it. But after 6 or 7 days, it's like a switch flipped in Klaus, and he, at that point, just fell in love with Oskar. We would bring him out periodically and just let Oskar sit on our laps when Klaus was sleeping during those early days. And then after that, we would, give Klaus a little glimpse of Oskar. And, on the 6th or 7th day, he just walked up, started licking him and kind of took him under his wing.
And what kind of challenges did you face early on with Oskar and his blindness?
Exactly 0 challenges. And that's the amazing thing, because I had no experience with blind animals or, with what people would call like special needs animals. It was, I had a different idea of what it would be like. I thought that there would be issues finding a litter box, especially since he never had a litter box before. He was outside, go to the bathroom wherever he wanted to. And, just how would he find his food? Just questions like that. Would he run into things? Do we need to put some sort of foam or something along the, the baseboards in case he's playing and he runs into a wall. But honestly, there is nothing that requires any extra attention on my part, as long, I think, as a cat like Oskar, that, blind from birth, is put into a indoor environment where he or she is safe, then there isn't much else that you have to do. The cats don't rely, I think, on vision as much as we, humans would attribute to that sense. And he did great. There were no problems at all.
I need his cat instincts because I'm totally blind and I hit walls all the time.
Well, the thing is, everybody will hit walls. When Klaus is, playing and running around here, and, Klaus is a fully sighted cat, he too will, miss and then slide on the bare floor and run into the couch, or he'll try to jump from one like the edge of the couch to the bed or something like that, or his cat tree, and he will miss just because he just doesn't gauge it correctly. So it's not an issue. Obviously Oskar's life is a little bit different, and when he does get excited and he plays and there's something new on the floor he hasn't seen before, it's very likely that he might bump into it, but very quickly he puts that in his memory bank that's there, and he adjusts to that new environment almost instantaneously.
It's interesting, you almost wonder that because he was an outdoor cat as a kitten, that perhaps maybe helped meld his instincts a little better than a cat that was maybe raised indoor?
Maybe it could very well be. However, over the course of the years, as we kind of built our social or online family using Facebook and met a lot of people that we're in contact with and a lot of experts in the field. There's an organization called Blind Cat Rescue and Sanctuary. It's I think the case for a lot of cats, whether they're outdoors or indoors, especially if they're born blind, they just automatically rely on the other senses, maybe a little bit more. But at the same time, it comes down to having kind of mental maps of the location that they're in. That's the consensus anyway. And the interesting thing about that is when I take Oskar on the road with me and we stay at a hotel room, then he has some built-in, I guess you would call them schemas, or just kind of mental maps of how things operate. For example, if he walks around the carpeted floors of the main living quarters or of the hotel room, he knows that that's probably where he's going to find a bed and some chairs and so on and so forth. If he steps on the cold tile, that generally means that he's in the bathroom. So he very quickly starts feeling his way out for the toilet, and he can jump on the edge of the toilet on the seat and then, feels out for where the tank is. And then he's normally sitting on top of the toilet tank, kind of reaching out for where the bathroom counter might be, because his goal is to get into the sink, because cats naturally like to drink running water. So,
right.
No matter what hotel room, I can see him apply those rules that, let him find what he wants to find very quickly. And it's a matter of 30 minutes before he's at ease with the place. He can move around without any problem.
Does Klaus treat him just like any other cat?
I think so. I don't have a lot of experience with Klaus and other cats, but I have had other cats in the past, and I know, the way they interact. And I think Klaus definitely does. I don't see him treating him any differently. I think that Oskar, the fact that Oskar's a little bit younger and probably a little tougher, he's a perfect match for Klaus. So whatever advantage Klaus may have with vision is, quickly zeroed out by Oskar's just ambition. So, you pour food in the food bowl and the cats are napping in another room, Oskar will be the first one to come running. So he knows what's good. But, interesting thing, though, just from, I guess, the standpoint of studying cats or predators, they, a lot of mammal predators rely on visual information to communicate, and facial expressions to communicate, some sort of mood or intent. So obviously everything from, the lips curling back and, the exposing teeth and baring teeth and, eyes being focused on something and ears being, low to the head. All of those things are kind of indicating to maybe another member of the species or another animal that the cat might be, kind of in an angry mood, or he may lash out at any time or strike out or whatever it may be. So, with Oskar's, very small eyes, it's, I think, very easy for Klaus to notice that something may be off about kind of the facial structure. However, that's something that's also, I personally don't notice it anymore, and maybe Klaus doesn't either, because Oskar is still very expressive just with his eyelids and the muscles around his eyes, so he can still kind of, gaze at you and have that image of a cat, kind of like in the the Shrek cartoons, Puss in Boots. He has the big eyes that melt everybody's heart, and he gets away with whatever. I can see those expressions personally within Oskar. So maybe Klaus now learns how to read him. He knows something is a little different, but he can read him just the same. But yeah, that's a whole other topic. I mean, that's animal behavior there, but. It's fun to observe and learn about these things with these guys in the house.
Absolutely. So why don't you walk us through then how the whole YouTube superstardom happened? Sure.
Yeah. It's I recorded a lot of the videos of Oskar when he was a kid, and just for the sake of my own memories, something I could watch in the future. I always brought a camera with me, so I actually have footage of Oskar on that farm from that first day, even before I brought him home. And I collected a lot of this stuff, and never had any desire to necessarily put this stuff on YouTube to share with the world. But I was a fan of cat videos, and or I should call them viral videos. They didn't have to necessarily be cat videos, but I knew that user-created content on YouTube could reach a lot of people. But, the reason I put the first video of Oskar on there was just as a means of sharing something funny that Oskar did with friends across the nation and, family around the world. And that was just a perfect vehicle, technology at the time, to upload a large video since it couldn't be attached to an email. And, I listed the video publicly. So I had Oskar since July of 2011. And as he was growing up, he did a lot of interesting things. One of the things he did in the morning when my wife was blow drying her hair, a lot of times she would just point the hairdryer towards him, and he liked the warm air coming out of the hairdryer. And sometimes she would crank it up so it was really, blowing at him. And then there's a cool air button on the hairdryer. So she would kind of treat it like a high power blower. And he liked the idea that something's coming at him and he tries to get it. So, he would stand up on his hind legs and try to kind of shadow box with the air. And I think to a blind cat, in a lot of ways, it may be, I guess the analogy would be maybe like a laser pointer to a sighted cat. It's something the cat's chasing. He never technically gets it, but the chase is the fun part of it. And he did that every single morning. So I just happened to capture that moment where he started playing with the air coming out of the hairdryer, stood up on his hind legs. He stands up for, I think, 20 seconds or 30 seconds. So it's hilarious whether you're watching just 3 seconds of it or whether you watch the full, minute of the video. So in a way, I kind of created the quintessential cat videos, like something that immediately resonates with everybody around the world. It's hilarious, whether, a segment or the full thing. And the video started to gain some traction after I shared it with friends. You never know where it ends up. At that point, it's, maybe they put it on Reddit, maybe they sent it to some site. I have no idea what happened, but it started getting more and more views. And then I was kind of thrown into the world of creating content for YouTube, because a lot of people, and I refer to him as Oskar the Blind Cat in the description of the video and the title, because if people noticed his face or noticed that something was different about his appearance, they could get that from the title right away. And, I never, I guess, defined him as being a blind cat. To me, he was just a cat. But a lot of people saw that title and were curious about living with a blind cat and what it's like. So I decided to share some more videos. The next one was uploaded also, in the fall, maybe a month after the original hairdryer video. And it was one that was more of kind of emotionally charged, kind of like a heartfelt video that showed Oskar playing with the very first toys that he ever had. This was the first day of transition from the farm to this synthetic indoor environment, and he was playing with a ball that had a bell inside. And it's not a funny cat video, but it's one that I think resonated with a lot of people because it's, holidays, end of the year. People needed something to break out from the negative news cycle. So we came through with that one, and that one actually had more views on YouTube. And then after that, we kind of, a lot of things snowballed from there. People wanted to see photos. So Facebook was a perfect way of delivering that and creating a community of people who are interested in Oskar's life. It was, to me, a perfect way to chronicle my life and have everything in one place, to share it with friends and family, and then to share it with all the people that have now been watching Oskar grow up over the years. So it's an obligation to keep going, even if for no other reason. I kind of feel like Oskar belongs to the world at this point, since he started off when he was so young.
And so how long did it take for things to really change for you guys?
Well, there were different stages to the way we treated this. I guess having a popular YouTube video, it's kind of like a lightning strike, or just it's a very momentary thing, and people will frequently, try to capitalize on it by having merchandise and things like that. And I always wanted, and I observed what other popular animals were doing, and I started this studying this kind of early on in our own career here with Oskar. So we spent the first maybe 9 months to a year just creating a lot of content for YouTube and kind of showing other little snippets from our life and trying to maybe educate some other people about what it's like to have a blind cat. And again, it's not, in our case, it's not that different from having any other cat, but I think it was just a peace of mind for a lot of people that would allow them to consider a cat like Oskar, and if they found one in a shelter, they wouldn't dismiss it immediately because they see Oskar thriving. And things at that point were really focused, again, on YouTube and on the Facebook page. And we found as the Facebook page grew that it was a good community to share other cats who are at a shelter, perhaps in a small town somewhere, that are in a position where they are not adopted because they were blind or have some other, maybe a neurological problem or something that made them be overlooked. So we started getting some requests, and we actually found some things on our own initiative too, over the web, animals that needed extra help. And as our page continued to grow, it was kind of like a beacon to rebroadcast its signal to a wider audience. And we started having some good luck getting cats adopted. And a lot of times there were hopeless and desperate situations. Some of the greatest things we ever did in terms of scale, there were cats in Oman in the Middle East that needed to be saved, and ultimately people and came together in the United States, and they ended up going to a shelter in Portland, Oregon. So these cats traveled halfway around the world, and they were ultimately placed. And this is all due to the ability for people to source funds via donations to put these kind of elaborate handoff schemes together. I personally was involved in driving some of the cats from the airport here in Seattle down to Portland, as the final leg of this journey. So that was the focus of the page and the community that we built very early on. It was just showing off what Oskar can do, and then pointing out other animals in a position similar to maybe Oskar's, where they have less of a chance to be adopted. And another thing that happened, we started receiving a lot of fun, cool cat products from very small independent companies across the U.S., across Canada as well. Companies that don't have a presence in a store like Petco or PetSmart for whatever reason. And we, instead of setting up a traditional merchandise shop that a lot of pet stores had, a place that prints T-shirts on demand or coffee mugs and so on, we decided to set up our own shop and then, just be a reseller for a lot of these cool product manufacturers. So, the next phase of this whole life cycle was building up kind of an online shop that featured a lot of things that you might not find anywhere else. And Oskar and Klaus were always the official product testers, so we always, endorsed everything perfectly. And and then there's a third part to this, which everything kind of grows organically, and it makes sense because once we're able to ship things effectively around the world, and we have a little, half the house is designated for shipping things, and we have a warehouse space where we keep everything. We found that if we created a children's book of some sort, then it would be no problem fulfilling all of the orders and doing the things ourselves. This wouldn't be a matter in which we're relying on a traditional publisher and approaching publishers and then waiting, the long life cycle to get something released. We could do it using a platform like Kickstarter and get the funds necessary to pay for printing costs and for, the artwork and so on, and be able to fulfill those orders. So the next stage was to create Oskar and Klaus Publishing and to release 2 books, which this is another example in which we wanted to do things a little differently. Instead of having something kind of generic like a photo book that only makes sense if you know the real animal, that this meme, like, I don't know, maybe use a grumpy cat as an example. A grumpy cat exists, people are familiar with this thing, and then there's a book at the local Barnes & Noble that has pictures of grumpy cat with some funny sayings. It's just a continuation of what already exists on the web. We wanted something that could be picked up and enjoyed by anybody, and it's an illustrated children's book series. It doesn't rely on photos of Oskar and Klaus, so you might not even know that a real cat named Oskar exists, who was the inspiration for all of this. And the book, has merit on that by itself. And that was, received very well by a lot of educators and fans and later organizations like the National Federation of the Blind. I mean, I'm skipping way ahead now. This is, I fast forwarded into year 4 of this whole project, but everything, as you can see, was like a stepping stone where we did one thing and then it gave us that experience to do the next thing and the next thing, and and we have many more projects that are still coming, and who knows where everything ends up. But it's all about sharing Oskar and showing him as a cat who is not defined by his blindness. He's adventurous, he's outgoing, he's sometimes creative in his approaches, and that's the way I want him to be portrayed. So.
Well, and I think that's really the interesting thing, is that there are parallels between Oskar and, say, a lot of people who are blind.
Absolutely.
I think so, yeah.
And I think that especially blind children, and this plays into the idea of the children's book, and that's really kind of what interested me, was that the children's books really kind of speak to a certain audience as well, on more than just a level about a cute blind cat. There's a real underlying message there for blind children.
Definitely. I know that's the case because we have received a lot of feedback about the books from a lot of people and a lot of organizations. And this is for educators of visually impaired kids, to standard classrooms across the country, to endorsements from Mark Riccobono of the National Federation of the Blind, who made Oskar an honorary member, card-carrying member now. And the National Federation of the Blind also awarded the Dr. Jacob Balaton Award to the Oskar and Klaus publishing team, which, again, I should introduce my good partner in this, Travis Bossard, who's a very old friend and creative partner of mine, and we collaborate on these projects together. He doesn't live in Seattle with me, so we talk on the phone every day and see how to take this story. But the cool thing is that we received an award that was granted in years past to people like Ray Kurzweil and to Apple computers for building in accessibility features. So it's something that I think it shows that the books are fulfilling the mission, which is the full integration of the blind into society on the basis of equality. And that message is there in the books, and I see it now very clearly. While before, to me, the big motivation was not to only show Oskar as completely capable and confident, because that's important. To me, it was also a message of exploring the world, whether you're out getting lost on adventures in the forest searching for mythical Sasquatch or going into space. It's just the idea that the world is there to be explored, regardless of what cards you were dealt at birth. And that stems from a stint that I had working for a nonprofit organization that actually pushed for that as well, just getting kids to unplug and explore the world around them. And but now I see the message is even louder and broader than what I remember when we started.
Now, and both books are, of course, available in Braille as well.
They are. The nice thing about being noticed by some of these organizations is that, before Travis and I offered the books in Braille as a special order item, it so happens that Travis's brother works for a school service in the Midwest, and he does he transcribes all the materials into Braille for students who need it. So he had the expertise to do it, but the materials and the time and paying him and Taco Bell and beer, whatever he wanted, it all added up to get him to do this for us. And we were able to crank out one book every month that way and offer it for people. But thanks to a very generous grant on behalf of the American Action Fund for Blind Children and Adults, we were able to get a large number of the books converted into the Twin Vision Braille, and we can sell them for exactly the same price that the standard books cost. So you can get 40-page nice hardbound book for $15, whether it has Braille or whether it's the standard version. And that is a very big thing to us because accessibility was always important. And I'll do one side note too. Actually before we had the Braille books, very early on, we decided to create an audiobook for each of the stories. So there is one that's finished and available for our first book. And that's something that Travis and I did on our own. We wanted the audiobook version to be there for blind or visually impaired kids or adults. It was also a means for us to get creative. We're musicians in our past life, and actually Travis still is very much involved in that field, but we're able to record something on our own, create the original music, record all of the sound effects, gather sounds with field recorders, out in the woods ourselves, and create something that's similar to the quality of audiobooks that, like Walt Disney Company put out back in the late 40s and 50s, of the heyday of that. So it's important, and now we have support to make it all reality.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're very lucky.
Yeah, you must wake up in the morning and just have this moment of, I can't believe this is where this has gone.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic thing. It's nothing that's ever was done for monetary gain or anything like that, because there really isn't any. We're struggling here in Seattle. It's an expensive place to live. To me, it's not the best and smartest options in terms of financial well-being. It's more of a labor of love. I hope that we do sell more books ultimately, and opportunities come up to make this really a career that will pay for my kids' college. But who knows? That's a discussion for another day, and I'm not even interested at this point. To me, the biggest freedom is that I get to spend more time with Oskar, because I do a lot of my work from home. I get to spend more time with my two young daughters. One is about ready to turn 2 this week, and the other one is 5 months old. So it was wonderful. I could be home with them during these very important kind of formative years, and that's the greatest joy from it.
Now, you've also just raised the funds to have one of the books, I guess it's the second one, The Mission to Kataria, read to school children from a live feed from the International Space Station.
Absolutely.
How did that come about?
Yeah, no, that's an incredible thing. Again, it's one of those honors and things that, that it's very hard to take it seriously, because I still don't believe it, until the rocket goes up. But there is an organization based in Canada called Storytime from Space. And this organization has a lot of former NASA astronauts and people involved in different levels of administration and so on, working together to basically, I guess, introduce books to kids that, number one, open their minds about space and make them dream about, a career, as an astronaut or a researcher or a scientist. So it is really kind of a push towards those STEM careers, but also really just, I guess, promote literacy in the coolest possible way. And that is by actually sending a physical copy of a children's book. And there have only been, I think, 12 to date. So Oskar's maybe 12th or 13th book. To actually send the physical copy of the book to the International Space Station. And at some point, with, the Earth rotating below, or actually the space station orbiting, this beautiful backdrop of the planet spinning below, an astronaut or a crew member will read the book. This is then recorded, and the video feed can be sent to classrooms across the world. It's edited a little bit too, so you can actually incorporate some of the images from the book along with the video feed when this is done. There are experiments on board as well that will accompany the book. So there will be, if I remember correctly, 9 experiments that will accompany this book, and these experiments will be structured in such a way that they will demonstrate how a blind scientist or explorer like Oskar can study the universe or some property of the universe just as effectively as anybody else. So this will really be about encouraging blind kids to think about science careers. And we're still working on the experiments. This is something that'll be a project between, former NASA science or astronaut and some members from the National Federation of the Blind. We have put those two organizations in touch together. So it'll really be a big collaboration. And this will happen sometime in 2017.
Wow.
It's incredible. And the funds, that I'm raising, there's no way I would raise the funds to pay for the whole thing. So luckily, Storytime from Space has the, agreements with NASA and other agencies to make this happen, because the cost soars into not even the tens of thousands of dollars. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can imagine. And there's a lot of competition for what gets sent to the space station. So The only funds that we had to really come up with that we're responsible for as authors are funds to test the book materials for toxicity. Just make sure that it's safe to go into space. And there's probably a NASA lab that does that. So it is unfortunately expensive, but not as expensive as the whole project. So our fans came through, and people from around the world came through and bought the Oskar T-shirt, and we have the money necessary. So this is happening for sure.
Wonderful.
So Rob, order your Oskar and Klaus T-shirt.
That's right. I probably will be getting one.
Yeah, it's a little bit over 1 day at this point is left in that, and yeah, it's great to do. The company that we work with on the shirts did a wonderful job. We wanted the shirts to have the tactile ink, the raised ink, so you can actually read the Braille that's on there that says Oskar into orbit, as well as the body of Oskar in a spacesuit. It's kind of a puffy ink, so you can feel the contours of his spacesuit and where his ear antennae are and all that good stuff.
Ryan, I just found your Christmas present.
You only got a day left. That or the audiobook.
The last project that is going to kind of come out of all of this, in addition to a third book, which has to happen at some point. I think that's for sure. That there are fans of the books now, and I have a lot of ideas floating around in my head that need to come out. So we're going to do a third book, but we do want to have an Oskar plush toy as well. And this is something that we'll also fund using Kickstarter. And this will be a project that we'll do in a way with the National Federation of the Blind, have some sort of involvement there. But this will be an Oskar toy that resembles the way Oskar is portrayed in the book. So it's a little, I guess, anthropomorphic. He stands on his hind legs, but it's a toy that will actually feature a cane. It'll be the only toy of its kind on the market, and not only will have a cane, Oskar will have a backpack as well, and that backpack will have room for a very small, portable, and durable MP3 player. So the audiobooks will be able to be put onto that, as well as any additional information or material that kids can download from the web. And this is something that can accompany any kiddo on adventures. The toy will be about 14 inches tall when it's finished, kind of finalizing the prototypes at this point. But we're looking at a lot of creative ways to make it happen, to finance this project, to make it feasible to do. It's actually really tough to get toys designed and out to the market. You do have to invest in a lot, and you're buying thousands of toys. You can't get 40 made, for example.
Right.
Or you could, but it'd be outrageous cost. So we're looking to make it the whole campaign on Kickstarter run in a way that we're able to donate a portion of those toys once we have a successful campaign to underserved blind kids across the U.S. and Canada as well, ultimately. So it's something that is still in the early stages, but I'm very excited about this because a lot of Oskar's, what I'm going to call traditional fans, the people that remember him from just the early days of YouTube, they want an Oskar toy of some sort. And I brought our first prototype around to a few different events we did recently, and people go crazy over it. So to me, it's a big deal. And there are a lot of actually educators and teaching kids about the independence that they gain from using a cane. And Oskar is a perfect model for that. It just shows that, the hero of these books uses the cane because it's a means of his independence as he's moving around. And I think it just kind of validates that for a lot of kids who do not want to stand out by using one. So I'm very excited to just bring that for that purpose alone.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, taking him to a lot of different events and appearances and stuff. What kind of events and appearances do you generally go to?
Well, I'm open to a lot of ideas. I never really seek these things out, but opportunities come out. Sometimes they're just pet summits, dealing with animal welfare, and people want to have Oskar there because they recognize him as a kind of an internet celebrity. I mean, he's been on the web now for half a decade. So to some people, it's just crazy that Oskar's going to, be in Brooklyn or in Los Angeles for an event. A lot of times it's for an animal shelter that's doing a fundraising event. They might do silent auction, and then Oskar is kind of a special guest. Other times, it's something like the National Federation of the Blind State of Washington Convention. And Oskar was kind of the featured guest of that, and I had an opportunity to speak about the books and the projects and our involvement with the NFB. Other times it's other things. This Thursday, for example, he's going to head out with Klaus and me down to a local brewery that's doing a fundraising event for an organization called the PAW Project, which is an initiative in the U.S. to have to actually have a bill that bans cat declawing, the practice of declawing, and that's something that we support. The ban on declawing. So having Oskar there will draw, I think, a fair amount of people and raise a little bit more money. So Oskar doesn't leave the house frequently. He travels very, very well, and generally it's for events that are relatively close to us. Every once in a while, he will hop on an airplane and travel a little bit further. This summer we'll be at CatCon, which is the huge convention for people who are just obsessed with cats. That's in Los Angeles. It's the third year they're doing it.
Bye, Rob.
Rob's got a new vacation destination.
Yeah, August 13th, 11th through the 13th.
I'm writing that
Those
down.
dates are coming out. But yeah, something like that makes a lot of sense to us because it's exposure to new fans, opportunity to be in touch with a lot of traditional media, news outlets, USA Today, and then Huffington Post, all of some online, some print publications will be there. So it's great to share Oskar's story that way and gain new fans and kind of help propel this thing even further. I wouldn't travel with Oskar if he didn't travel well.
Right.
And he does extremely well, whether in the car or the airplane. It's an issue of leaving his carrier out at the house at all times, so he's used to it. It just feels like it's a part of home. He sleeps in it at night, so when I carry it, it's essentially like traveling in your own bed. It makes flying a lot easier, and I think he's relatively stress-free in all of those events. Nothing beats being at home, but for a little exposure to a good cause and raising money for a great organization, hanging out with me somewhere for a few hours, and then watching and listening to bad television for the rest of the night, eating junk food. He can handle that. I can handle it too.
And does Klaus generally go along as well, or?
It's tougher to travel with him since we had the kids. I did travel. The last time I traveled with Klaus was in 2015. We all went down to South by Southwest. And that was a promotional event that Friskies, cat food, put together. They had this venue that they renamed the House of Bacon, and the Grumpy Cat and a lot of other famous internet cats were there. But yeah, it was just kind of a meet and greet for fans of internet cats. And it was you imagine walking or sitting in your airplane seat, and here comes a family with, a baby and then two cats. That was just dread for people who had to wonder if we're going to sit next to them. But actually, he travels quite well. It's very hard to fly with two cats for one person. So now I'm traveling by myself. You do have to pay for a pet to be underneath the seat. And generally airlines charge between $100 and $150 one way. So sometimes it's cheaper for me to fly than for Oskar. I mean, he's, $300 on Delta or something. So yeah, if I have to have a second cat, then all of a sudden we're looking up to $600 round trip, and then I have to have him underneath somebody else's seat. I don't know how that even works. So
hold on,
Klaus
wait a second. If he's a card-carrying NFB member, you should be able to get on as a companion fare.
Oh, that's true.
Technically he could. Yeah, that's no, it's fine. It's Klaus is 10 years older than Oskar, so I think he had these are his golden years. So at this point, I won't take him to too many places. But he has a few appearances left. I just don't know when and where. He will be at CatCon in Los Angeles in August, though. So we're all going down there. We'll probably drive down there from Seattle.
Right.
So are there any internet cats out there that you just can't stand? The fame's just gone straight to their head.
Well, no, I can't say that. The cats, they're cats. They're wonderful. The owners, they have different ideas of what to do with this kind of the stardom. I think some people treat it kind of like a launching pad for their own, Hollywood careers, because some accounts, you see the person more than you see the cat, and people are following for the cat. So it's kind of funny, just different personalities. I don't have anything except good things to say though about everybody that we met. Everybody from Grumpy Cat's owners, and that's a different entity altogether. I mean, this is like a multi-million-dollar licensing thing. You know, there were toys of Grumpy Cat in every drugstore and gas station across America at one point. So, you know, they had a different approach to it, but, you know, it's fun sharing notes and, you know, realizing that we get to do some exceptionally cool things because of the pets. And, you know, the direction that I want to go really is to not only inspire people to think differently about adopting cats or dogs who are blind, but also to inspire blind kids and adults to live life to the fullest, which is kind of what, you know, Oskar embodies. But no, they're all great. And I think, just to add to that, I think a lot of the famous cats out there, like Grumpy Cat, Little Bub, you know, Oskar, they're all rescue cats from a shelter or, you know, for kind of rejects from a breeder. You know, they were considered less than perfect by the standards of like what a pedigree cat show would do. But they're all unique, and they all have, you know, some sort of, you know, what people would call, quote unquote, an issue. And I think maybe that encourages people to adopt whatever cat needs home the most at the shelter instead of looking for the perfect kitten, you know. So they all do wonders just by sharing their pictures and videos daily.
Anything that you want to plug or you want to talk about? I mean, we'll of course include, you know, the website and everything in the show notes as well. But go ahead and you know, where can people find you?
Yes, for information about Oskar, obviously, you know, a quick a Google search of Oskar, and that's spelled with a K. A lot of people do it with a C, but Oskar. Oskar on Google will bring up almost immediately the most famous YouTube videos, but also links to our Facebook page. But really, we try to create a hub recently for all things related to what Oskar's doing. And that website is oscarcat.com or oscarthecat.com. All of those web addresses will point to the same location. So there we will definitely share information about the upcoming Kickstarter campaign that we'll have for the plush toy, about information about Oskar's book once it's in space or you know, when the launch date is announced, so people can link to the Storytime from Space website. We'll announce all our involvement with the National Federation of the Blind, so we'll have some links directed from there as well. Out of social media networks, I am really a big fan of Instagram. I think it's kind of the slickest and easiest to operate for the majority of our fans. So just a quick search of Oskar the Blind Cat in the search bar will bring up our Instagram account.
Great.
And you'll be able to follow us. And we do post almost daily, so there are all sorts of adventures and shenanigans.
Sorry, I'm writing that down.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what Rob's doing the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think we have it's in the thousands as far as pictures and videos. So It's you will not be bored. I promise you that.
Okay, well, thanks, Mick, for coming on. I mean, we really appreciate it, and it was awesome to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Give our best to Oskar.
Right next to me, right here. Yeah, Klaus actually came back, and Oskar is down here too. Yeah, he's interested in what I'm doing now. So,
does Oskar have anything he wants to add?
Good Lord.
Vote for Hillary.
Yeah, maybe out of all those choices, there'd probably be a better choice as far as he's concerned. But yeah, no, he's not interested. You know, it's the beauty of being a cat. You don't care what happens. You know,
that's right.
Yeah, he probably heard that Trump is into grabbing pussies too. So.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. No, we'll see. We got a few more hours of election, and after that, yeah, I'm going to this fundraiser to drink beer just to celebrate the end of the election. The money raised for the PRA project, that's like an extra thing. But no, again, it was a pleasure to be on the podcast, and definitely, you know, excited to continue with this journey. And Oskar is only 5 years old now, so I think we have many, many more years of him spreading his message, and it's certainly a positive one.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep an eye out for him, and thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care, Mick.
Take care. Bye.
Well, I thought that was amazing.
That was pretty fun.
I'm telling you, I'm going to CatCon. I'm
I
already booking the time right now.
You should.
I have to admit, when you said our guest was going to be a cat, I thought Rob's gone. He's gone nuts. He's cracked. But this was actually a lot of fun.
It was and very interesting.
Well, I think it was interesting, him talking about the advocacy issues and, how the blind cat kind of relates to blind children, and a cane isn't, a negative thing. It can be a positive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting take on it all.
Yeah, it's a really good message.
Mm-hmm.
I think he stopped short on saying what he really thought about Grumpy Cat, though. I heard Grumpy Cat is a bit of a handful, a bit of a diva. Just the rumors I've heard, that's all.
But Oscar's still young. He's got a long time ahead of him.
That's true. Where the hell can people find us, Ryan?
People can find us online at atbanter.com.
And they can email us at atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
They can also find us on Facebook. They can find us on the Google. They can find us on YouTube.
And Twitter. iTunes. Stitcher.
iTunes.
What are we doing next week, Ryan?
Next week we have Ben from a new startup called BuzzClip, which is a wearable sonar device for people who are blind.
Really? Where are they based out of?
Ontario, I believe.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to hearing about their new product. I think it was about to launch the end of October, so.
All right.
Should be interesting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, until then, good folks of the internet, we will see you next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Aroga Technologies. Visit Aroga Technologies online at www.aroga.com. That's AROGA.com. Music provided by bensound.com.